Hello and welcome back. So Aaron Ekblad injury details just got announced last night and early this morning, and it is not good at all. Definitely not good for the player, not good for the Panthers, not good for the Panthers goaltending. And what does this mean for fantasy owners who own either Ekblad or Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight? What does this mean both in the short term and the long term for your fantasy team? And how can you navigate the injury news so that it doesn't end up destroying your season? So Ekblad is no stranger to the IR. He's missed 21 games in each of the last two seasons with a broken leg and a knee issue. Luckily for him, this groin strain is supposedly unrelated to those issues. But after consulting our Data Draft sports medicine consultant, he's an orthopedic doctor, the minimum timeline for this return would be about 6 weeks. But with that timeline, there would be a risk of re-aggravating the groin and potentially hurting the rest of his season if he does re-aggravate it. He could be battling that sort of like a lingering issue for the rest of the season if they try to rush him back in that 6-week timeline. A safer and more pragmatic timeline is around 8 to 10 weeks for this injury, which puts Ekblad out until mid-December. So what you see at the bottom is Florida's record without Ekblad in the lineup for that 42-game span over the last two seasons up here. And without him last year, they were tied for the second best record in the league, though they did have Mackenzie Weegar in the lineup. However, during that span, they fell from 13th in the league with 2.9 goals against average per game to 20th in the league at 3.3 goals against. So this was likely papered over by their incredible offensive output, going from number 1 in the league at 4.1 goals for per game to number 3 in the league at 4.3 goals for per game. So they actually increased from 4.1 to 4.3 goals for once Ekblad was out, and that likely papered over their decrease in their defensive, how well they were suppressing goals and shots as well. So last year with Ekblad out and with Weegar, they dropped 0.4 goals against per game. Now let's take a look at their current lineup for tonight, and it doesn't look all that pretty. So here's the defensive core right now. Now, this is without Brandon Montour. He's out day-to-day with an upper body injury. He will factor in later. But if you're looking for a short-term option, there's not a whole lot other than Gustav Forsling, who will jump into that number 1 role. Now, Forsling is an excellent number 3, number 4 defenseman, but now he's going to eat up a ton of minutes. He logged over 28 minutes last game and has, actually put up excellent stats thus far. So 3 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, +3, 5 hits, 4 blocks, and his average ice time is 25 minutes and climbing, but nothing on the power play yet. And then if you look at some of these other guys, I have Gudas. He's a hits and blocks guy. I would maybe expect a little bit of a bump in those numbers just because of his ice time increasing. And then I test, Mark Stahl slots in as the number 3 defenseman. These are 2 young guys, Kierstad and Carlson, getting called up. Josh Mahura is, likely going to be on that third line as opposed to that second pair. So Mark Stahl, he's looked somewhat bad thus far in the season. Stats aren't great. 3 games, no points, 7 hits, 6 blocks, and a -2. But yeah, so nothing crazy in terms of what you're going to get out of tonight's lineup. You could potentially wait for Brandon Montour. You'd only get maybe 2 games this week if he does come back for the Friday-Sunday matchups, but he's averaging a ton of ice time if he does come back, and we'll get back to him a little bit later. But other than the defense, the main thing that the injury impacts is goaltending. So last year, Ekblad's injury occurred around March 20th, and if you look at each goaltender stats before and after that point, Bobrovsky was doing very well for all you fantasy owners, a .917 save percentage, 2.54 goals against, 13th in the league in that metric, and an outstanding record. So if you look 36-2, that's really good. You were getting a ton of wins. You were getting good save percentage and good goals against as well. Then after the injury, the goals against climbs by almost 0.5 goals per game. The save percentage tanks by 0.19, and yet his record stayed really good. So he's 9-1-1 after that injury, but that was again likely the result of the Panthers' incredible 4.3 goals per game offense. Now, the slightly quirky aspect of this data is that Spencer Knight actually got better after the injury, but let's take a look back at his whole season. He started the season very well with a .918 save percentage, 2.51 goals against in his first 5 starts, and the team went 10-0-1 to start the season. But then Knight started to struggle, and by late January, he was sent down to Charlotte of the AHL. So down in Charlotte, he puts up a 7-3 record with a .917 save percentage during the month of February, and then he was recalled to the big squad on March 6th, just 2 weeks before the Ekblad injury. So after the injury, during the month of April, Spencer Knight went 6-1 with a .925 save percentage and a 2.16 goals against, and was named Rookie of the Month. So again, they did have Mackenzie Weegar during that point, and their offense was scoring over 4 goals per game, two factors that aren't necessarily the case right now. I think the takeaway here is that Bobrovsky owners should maybe start planning for an 8 to 10 week stretch of poor goaltending and maybe think about making a trade or finding an alternative somehow. As for Ekblad owners who are directly impacted by this, myself included, we also need to find alternatives. So who is out there right now that you could look at for potential power play production coverage, as well as some peripheral stats as well? So one thing that Aaron Ekblad is really good at is his shot volume, 2.95 shots per game. So if you're looking to replace the shot volume of Ekblad, you're probably going to need a trade, because that is very good, that 2.95 number. But it is encouraging that a couple of these names on this list, so this is the available defensemen. Actually, most of these are unavailable. You can see the free agents here, but this is defensemen sorted by projected shots this season. These are Yahoo projections that are actually powered by Rotowire, so take that, whatever you want to make of that. But nonetheless, this is right about where these guys are falling in that 1.8 to 2 shot per game range. And you see Forsling and Montour here right around the same range, about 150 shots, which would be about 1.8 shots per game. Montour is more available at only 18% owned, whereas Forsling, he's been getting a ton of ads today. He's up to 60% owned. I don't necessarily think Forsling is a lock to be on that PP1. We will come back to that in just a second. But if you're looking for power play time or goals, and you're in a league without plus minus, and that's key, you should be looking at Shane Gostisbehere. So 49% owned, currently has 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points in 3 games, but he is a -4, so that's why you need to make sure you don't have plus minus. He has 2 hits, 5 blocks, and 4 power play points, and a shorthanded goal as well. He's also logging 23 plus minutes per night, and he's quarterbacking PP1. As for his schedule, Arizona plays Thursday in Montreal, Saturday night in Ottawa. So if your D are all playing on those nights, maybe try to pick up one of the Panthers, as they play Philly tonight on Wednesday night, and then Tampa on Friday, and then the Islanders on Sunday. So an extra game if you can get to your roster before puck drop tonight and grab one of those guys. But if you're looking at more of a longer term play, Gostisbehere is projected to put up about 17 power play points, around 13 goals, and that would track with the numbers he was putting up last year. You're also going to get a decent blocks number that's over 1 block per game. And then you're going to get some production offensively as well. So that's just something to keep in mind if you don't have plus minus. Now, other power play production options, Calen Addison, only 16% owned, 3 games played, 4 assists, 3 of those were on the power play. He's definitely a guy that you want to take a look at if you're looking for a power play quarterback. As I mentioned before on the channel, the Seattle power play is not owned up yet. So Justin Schultz, 18%, 4 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, 2 power play points. And then Vince Dunn, 37%, 4 games played, no goals, 2 assists, and 2 power play points. Now, the differentiating factor may be power play time on ice. So if you look at this, it's clear Brandon Montour is leading the entire league in power play time on ice thus far, albeit in only 2 games. So it's a per game type of thing, and he was getting a ton early on. Now, he's not available tonight, and he may not be available for the rest of this week, just depending on that upper body injury. So as you notice, Calen Addison is number 2, and that's why he's 16% owned, a little bit higher than what he would have been a couple weeks ago, because he's now getting that power play time. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention, I did actually find out who JJ Moser is. It's this guy. This is his mugshot right here. So, just did a quick dive into it. He's a real hockey player, Swiss-born, 22-year-old defenseman, 6'1", 172 pounds, former second-round pick in 2021. That was of the Coyotes draft pick. And then Elite Prospects says he's an all-around D-man with a great set of skating skills, who's brilliant defensively. He can also play on the power play thanks to his good hockey sense. And then last year, he put up 15 points in 43 games with Arizona, 12 points in 18 games in Tucson, and 4 points in 8 games at the World Championships playing for the Swiss. Now, it's also worth mentioning that Justin Schultz is at the bottom here at 355 time on ice, and he's at 18th. Vince Dunn was 33rd with 252 time on ice on the power play. So they do use both of them, but they favor Schultz. And again, if you're just looking for a stream for the rest of the week, you can get that extra game with one of those two options, or potentially Gustav Forsling, as Montour is still hurt and will only get you a max of 2 games as he's out tonight. And Gostisbehere only has 2 more games this week as well. If you don't care about the power play production, here's a few options to look out for. So right now, Matt Roy, only 7% owned, but currently ranked 13th overall in category leagues, and this is why. So 5 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 12 shots, 8 hits, and 14 blocks. That 14 blocks is good for second in the league. Below him, Connor Clifton, getting a little bit of everything in terms of peripherals and adding 4 assists in 4 games. He's only 13% owned, and the Bruins may be getting Grzelcyk back soon, but they did lose Brandon Carlo, so Clifton has been averaging 22 minutes per night. No power play time, though, so you're not going to get that out of Clifton. David Savard, if you're in a league where you need just blocks, he currently leads the league by 9. So Matt Roy is second with 14, while Savard is elite in this category at 23 blocks already. So if you want a combined hits and blocks D, maybe go with Roy or Clifton, but for just blocks, Savard is definitely the best. Now, right below him, Mario Ferraro. Usually you get hits with him. So 2021, he averaged 2.76 hits per game, and then last year, 2.22 hits per game. This year, you only got 2 hits in 5 games, but you are getting a couple assists, 1 power play point, 239 power play time on ice per game, and 13 blocks. So you could buy him for the production and hope the hitting comes around, which I expect it will. If you want something of an enigmatic goal scorer, try Michael Stone. So only 2% owned, 3 games, a goal, 2 assists, 5 shots, 3 hits, and 6 blocks. But if you remember back to this analysis, this was goal per game average for defensemen. This is a dashboard I did, and you can access this in the Patreon link in the description below. But here, Michael Stone on a per game basis was scoring at a very impressive rate. That .18 goal per game number is good for almost 15 goals in an 82 game season. Now, granted, he only played 11 games last year, which is why you likely forgot about him and why he's likely on this list. But his production this season is basically a point per game. So, he's got 3 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, 1 power play goal. So he's definitely trending in the right direction despite only seeing 12.5 minutes per game. So maybe he's not the best fantasy option for a 12-team league, but if you're in a deeper league or maybe for the longer term, just keep an eye out for Stone, as he is one of those guys that on a per game basis was scoring with some of the best in the league. And lastly, just wanted to mention really quickly Adam Boquist on that same list right up here, .21 goals per game last year. That's a 17-goal pace over 82 games. He's 12% owned right now. Absolutely no stats in 3 games other than 2 shots. So maybe something to think about longer term as you stream someone to get you through this week. And speaking of that, I hope some of this info does help you navigate the near and longer term future without Ekblad. Hopefully you can stash him on IR and get him back for the second half. He's still an elite defenseman that you want in your lineup come playoff time, as long as they don't rush him back and potentially allow him to re-aggravate that groin injury. But that's going to do it for this video. If you made it through to the end, I want to thank you for sticking with it, and I will see you in the next one.